Hey, I got some good questions here for you that have kind of, since we've been out, I've been wanting to ask you. What was that one pivotal moment, that one thing that you can pinpoint that really sort of led you to reconsider everything and just decide this wasn't it, this that your life needed to change?
Well, pinpointing it down to one thing is going to be really difficult because it was a whole conglomeration of things. But what really, if I had to pinpoint one thing, what really set me on the path to change, or the first major seed that I would say that was planted, was meeting Daryl Davis in 2016. Is when Daryl explained to me how racism and how hate affected him as a child, when he was in the Boy Scouts, and how as a child people were throwing rocks at him. And when I had met Daryl, we're sitting, well, first of all, I should say Daryl's black. And so that adds to the story, why they were throwing rocks at him. So his parents had to explain to him that he was being pelted with rocks because he was the only black child at the Boy Scout parade. So I'm sitting across from him and hearing him talk about this. It was an interview. He was interviewing me for his film Accidental Courtesy, and I'm hearing this experience that he had, and I'm thinking, I'm a father, I have children. I thought when I was in the movement that I was going to be doing a good thing for my race, for my people, for my country. I considered myself a patriot, and I thought I was doing something good. And here I'm hearing about how this ideology affected this man as a child and what it did to him. And it didn't sit right with me. And it was about a year later, or maybe it was 6 months later, but within the next year of meeting him, I had met another filmmaker by the name of Dia Khan, and she had a similar story. And she had said that um, this ideology in the movement had made her feel like less than a person as a child, and it made her feel unwanted and ugly, and all these different terrible, horrible emotions. And it really affected me in such a way, like, this ideology, if it's doing that to other people, we didn't think about those sort of things. When you're involved in this type of movement, you're thinking about not yourself necessarily, but the people around you, and just your own race or your own people. So you don't take into consideration how that affects other people and what it does to them. And you just put that stuff out of your head when you're sitting across from somebody, especially like meeting Dia. We had developed a friendship over the course of filming, and now it's very real. It's not this distant person on the other side of the country that's getting hurt feelings or something like that. It's very real because it's affecting that person that's sitting right across from you, and you can see it, you can feel it, you can sense it, how damaging that was. And to me, that was a I didn't leave right then, but that was one of those wake up calls that said to me, you need to start looking at this more closely, and realize that what you're doing is potentially, if it's damaging these people, those are just a couple of people that I had met personally. What is that doing to people all across the country, all across the globe? How is that affecting them? How is that affecting their emotional and mental well-being, and their mental health? It's not good. So those were some of the first major seeds for me that really started me to reflect and think on these things. And I was projecting those changes into the organization at the time. I want to draw it back a little bit here. I was still in the NSM at that time, and I was appearing on these programs, um, as a representative of the NSM. I was thinking I'm going to get the propaganda or the message out or whatever. And on the inside, they got me thinking, like, this isn't okay. This is not good. So I'm making changes in the group and at the time, and I didn't realize it, but I was de-radicalizing already at that time. It's the opposite of the approach that we use at Beyond Barriers, because we want people to disengage, then we work on de-radicalization. My journey was all backwards in that sense, and we don't recommend that at all, because it's not the best way to do it. But I was actually de-radicalizing as I was still running the NSM, and I was projecting that out on the group and trying to change little things. But you can't change an organization like that. So like there's the old saying that goes, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. This is what I was trying to do in the NSM. I was trying to put lipstick on a pig, and turn the Nazi Party into a white civil rights organization. In 2016, in my head, that made total sense. After I left, and I mean, almost immediately after I left, and I had that time to process these things, I was beating myself up over it and going, man, Jeff, how stupid could you be to think that you could change a group, the Nazi Party, into something that was positive and things like that? It didn't make any sense. But at the time when I was involved in it, that's how I was making sense of it at the time. And it just doesn't work. You can put lipstick on a pig, sure, but it's still a pig. And that was that. But how about you? You were explain how when you first started having those changes.
I left in 2013. Um, for me, it was a culmination of a lot of things also. Um, I started to realize that as I was the chief of staff of the NSM, I was getting a whole lot of calls and emails and messages from people that would call each other brother when we'd be at events and stuff. And, when they'd be emailing me and say, hey, they have this Puerto Rican guy that they're friends with on Facebook, you should keep an eye on them. Or that guy that was at our last rally that I was talking with, we had the room together at the hotel, but I think he's a Fed. And it was, the whole thing was, we have all these perceived enemies when you're in the movement. You don't want to have to look over your left shoulder for your perceived enemies and then your right shoulder for the guy that called you brother a little bit ago. And one of the things that initially drew me into the movement was having an identity and having people that accepted me just because I was white, but that's fake. It's not real. All of that is complete and utter garbage. They're looking at everything you do under a microscope. If you act out of sorts, well, maybe that guy's gay. Let me talk to this person about it. Maybe we'll find out if he's gay. Oh, he's got black friends, so he's obviously in with the black people. So, he can't be a part of this movement because he has friends of color. And it was so ridiculous. And so that really, that was the one thing that really started setting me off. And it was like, all right, well, maybe I'll just stay in this alone, and I'll just keep doing my work. And then my daughter was born. And my daughter was my first blood child. Okay. My sons I have adopted. They were my wife's from her previous marriage. But my daughter's born. I get a phone call. And it's this guy who's another real well-known person in the NSM. And he's like, hey, I just got word from the commander, your daughter's born. And I'm like, oh, yeah, she was just born. How big is she? And he asked me all this stuff, just being really nice about it. And I'm like, yeah. And then finally he gets on and he's like, all right, I got one more thing to ask you. Why are you working with Anonymous and why are you a traitor? And it's like, I've seen it happen all throughout everything. I'm seeing it now happen and being projected onto me when I have done absolutely nothing to betray anybody. I'm just going to isolate for a little while. So about a week passed after that. But during that, it really started to stew. It's like, well, if that was crap, what else was crap? What else was that I fall for and get ingrained in me from childhood until, from like age 12 till 2013, it was ingrained in me. I was pretty much raised in it. And I started just looking at things and looking over things. And there was a black guy sitting outside of the hospital. And he's just sitting there smoking a cigarette. He has his like IV bag attached to him. He had cancer and he's just sitting there and he's like, hey, what are you doing here? I see you keep coming outside and then going back in. I tell him I had just had a baby. He stands up, he gives me a hug. He's like, congratulations, man. Even if they say I don't have a long time to live, at least life was born here during this time that I'm here. And I got to meet somebody, and it was just a really nice exchange. And then we all go inside, and I go up to the room where my wife is and the baby. And I'm just sitting there like kind of frozen and off distant, because all this crap is like processing. It's like, okay, so I was just treated really nice by a black person. I kept all people of color out of my life at that point. I did not have a single person of color or a Jewish person or anything as a friend. And this guy was just really nice to me out of the blue for no reason whatsoever. He didn't want anything, just really nice to me. Okay, well, what else is crap? And I just started going through everything in my head, and it was like a ladder that was collapsing on itself stage by stage as I kept thinking through things. And it was like revisionist history was the biggest thing for me. The whole, Jewish people control everything, and the Holocaust was fake, and all of that. And that started going through my head. And it's like, when you look at it from a perspective of this could be crap, you start to realize they have shoes from the Holocaust, thousands of pairs of shoes, millions of pairs actually. They have the bones, they have pictures, they have names. Revisionist history is just a way to substantiate the false ideology that they want you to believe. And after that, I was just like, I'm done. I just pretty much started life over. Just cut everybody out of my life and started everything over. I didn't want any part of that anymore. And then all the realizations hit and all of that, like, wow, I was really not a good guy. I always wanted to be the good guy. Nobody wakes up and wants to be the villain in the story. Nobody wakes up and says, you know what, I want to make these people terrified of me. I want to be the worst human being I can possibly be to people. And it's like you go to sleep and then you wake up the next morning and realizing that's exactly what you are. And that hit me like a ton of bricks in the chest. And at this point, I'm still sleeping in the hospital with my wife, and the baby's still in there. And it's like I'm holding this beautiful little baby in my arms, and I'm so happy. But at the same time, it's like my life just ended, because I can never go back to that because of all the introspection and realizations that happened. And that was really everything that led me to that point. It was all from that one little thing snowballing, that one seed, and then that seed sprouting and growing limbs. And that's everything.
Everybody, I want to say on behalf of both myself and the rest of the staff here at Beyond Barriers, I want to give a heartfelt thank you for choosing to tune in tonight and to learn. This is nothing short of amazing what we do, and we will continue to put out material like this, but we can't do it without you. Check out www.beyondbarriersusa.org.